Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bhedu Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Gukarastu Andhakaro Vai Rukarastu Nivartakaha Andhakara Nirodhitvat Gururitya Vidhiyate Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namah Shri Shankarananda Guru Padambujanmane Savilasa Mahamoha Graha Grasaika Karmane. So let us continue with our analysis of what is necessary for us to obtain a sense of freedom which is not borrowed, which is not temporary, because exactly that's what happens in our life is that we do get some sense of freedom, but it is short-lived. It is borrowed as a result of some outside factors. And I don't know what else to do. I do my best to maximize the advent of sukham, of ananda, freedom, and I'm knowing fully well that it just comes and goes. So I accept it as a matter of life, and it is confirmed by the experiences of everybody else that I know of, even people who seem to be very intelligent and who have been searching, who have good intention, they have good intentions. All of that also confirms that there's no other way. So here our Vedic Shastra says, no, that is not really the situation. All of you are really under the, there's some problem in your understanding. Please see and give me some time to explain it to you. Shastra says that your nature is total freedom. And even though the majority of the people that you're dealing with also don't see it that way, but the truth doesn't depend on majority. This is like a public, it's not a poll. The truth is what it is. This is Vastu Tantram. This is what the Shastra says. That your attitudes, your thinking, your conclusions are dependent on you, the pursuer. This is what is called Purusha Tantram. Purusha Tantra means that it is depending on your subjectivity, what view you have. And there are so many views. And so even upasana and karma and shraddha, all of these depend upon the person who is pursuing. But the nature of truth is something totally different. It is not Purusha Tantram, it is Vastu Tantram. So you can five people can touch the elephant and come to five different conclusions, but that doesn't mean that they know exactly what is going on. And so an elephant is what it is. And so if you could open the eyes, if you can have non-blind people touching it, then you come to a different conclusion. So that being the case, Shastra says that do not really give me a chance to show you what the truth is. So this is what we are doing, and the process of discovering what the truth is has some steps that you have to go through, and certainly Shraddha is a very major part of that. So Shraddha means that you have to have an open mind. If you have already concluded that this is not where things are, and we're going to go through some variations of that, then you're given up too soon. So you have to really think about it and see the way Shastra wants you to see. So this is what we're doing. We're doing an analysis of Ananda, an analysis of not the Ananda as a temporary nature, but as something which is either there or it isn't. And Shastra says, of course it is there. There's no question about that. It's like asking, have you seen the reality? And people will say, of course we have. And you just have to let me show you how to do this about yourself. So anyway, this is the Shastra. So in that process, what we began was, we made the conclusion was that feel the nature of your own experience in deep sleep. So this is a normal methodology used in the Shastra, Vedic Shastra, which is that your search must begin with yourself. A lot of the other spiritual truths say you don't have to look at yourself because you're already very miserable. There's nothing much you can do that. Nothing you can do much about it. So you have to start for looking God. And God is obviously not me. Because if I'm miserable and not happy, then I don't want God also to be miserable and happy. So the God must be something different from me. And so most of the religious and spiritual pursuits start with a pursuit of Ishvara. And in Vedas, it is just a completely different way of looking at things, because you say you must analyze your own experiences. Why should we do that? Because even though our own experiences about ourselves are faulty, so Vedas don't say that you just look at yourself and that is the truth. No, not the way we have been looking at ourselves. That's not the truth. But I trust my experiences, because that's not something that has to be shown as being what's called paroksha. Paroksha means away from me. Presence of God, for example, is paroksha, is away from me. But Vedas say that let us examine the aparoksha. Aparoksha means which is not away from you. And so the best example of that is myself. Because wherever I go, I am there. I cannot miss myself. So it's a sure shot person that I'm very familiar with. So Veda says, good. Let us start with the analysis of that, and let's follow through where you are making a mistake. And in the process, you discover that I'm making a mistake because I fail to recognize the presence of Paramatma in me. So if I follow the script of the Vedas, of the Vedic Shastra, then it shows me where the mistake is. So eventually we reach Ishvara just like all the other religious thoughts and so on. So it's not as though you ignore Ishvara. You cannot. This is the whole Srishti belongs to the Ishvara. So how can I ignore it? But the methodology starts with an experience. So in some way, I cannot even begin to have Shraddha towards what is being told to me, which is not understandable to me at this point. So something new. I cannot begin to understand what is new until the base point of my experience, which is familiar to me, is started. The base point has to be started with my own experience. So here, Shastra says, good. So let us start with deep sleep. Don't you agree, as we have said already, I won't go through all of that it is total. There is no duality in deep sleep. It is a non-duality. And most importantly, you don't have to do anything about it. Because otherwise your feeling is that I'm not very happy because I have so many unknown things that I have to do. Every time I get up in the morning, I have a long list of things that I should be doing. Honestly. I have to remind the students about Aim for Seva. There is a former student of mine who used to come to my classes a long time ago, and then she got distracted with raising a family and so on. She has been bugging me that please give me a lesson. I want to rejoin your classes. And I've been promising her for the last 2-3 months. And I feel bad about it. I haven't done it, but it's going to take me some while to figure out the lesson. So I have a number of things that I need to do that are pending. I have to pay some bills. There is some legal things that I have to do. I have chock full of things that are undone. And they are all impinging on me the moment I get up. Now, so the only thing that happens is that if my estimation is only that I am a human being who is at the mercy of all the completions, then my sense of satisfaction is missing. Because, as I've been saying for a long time, that our list of things to do, which keeps our ananda at bay, list of things that I have to do that prevents me from just total satisfaction is endless. And your and my experiences are, you solve a couple of things, there are two or three other things that get added to the list. It's very rare where you say, okay, everything that I needed to do, my bills are all paid off, my mortgage is paid off, everything is well, I don't really have anything to do. That doesn't happen. So I am in the mercy of everything. So the only thing that you can do is weigh the things that need to be done that are preventing me from seeing myself against in self-estimation of who I really am. And that is slowly happening to me. And the same things that used to bother me because I did not have any alternative view about myself. Things were not very clear about who I am and what this whole process is. At that time, they would take center stage and I would be unhappy. I've got to do this, I've got to do that. And there were periods in my life really, where I was overwhelmed with my own desires, my own incapability of meeting deadlines and so on. There were just too many things happening in my life. Marriage, job, this, health problems and so on. But Ishvara has finally taken me under the wings and provided me with the right teachers at the right time. And I'm a different person now. My wants and to do things are still there, but I do not let them bother me nearly to the point that it used to be. So this is what I think we have to do, is to, anyway, going back to the reason why I went into this is that we should understand that at night time, and so this explanation by Swami Dayanandji, when I first heard it, was very, very helpful to me, because that opened my eyes. This is what we have to do. We have to conclude the truth of some things that are pointed out by a person. And what Swamiji had pointed was, look, you said you are not going to be happy until all these to-do lists are taken care of, don't you? So we said, yes, Swamiji, of course, it makes sense. That's our experience. Aha! Can I falsify that conclusion for you? Look, for 4 hours out of the 8 hours, or however long you are in deep sleep, what have you accomplished? Have you finished any of those unfinished checklist of lists? And yet you are very happy. Oh my gosh, when you start thinking about it, you say, that is true. There's something funny going on here. The happiest person I am personally, everybody, is when I don't have to do anything. I don't even think about it. Because otherwise, if my nature was not Ananda, then somehow or the other I will not be happy when I'll be asleep. But they all go away. So this is the starting point of the Vedas. So this is what we did. That's why we did all the analysis of deep sleep. So then the question was, all right, I understand that, but why is it that when I am awake, that sense of completion, the sense of being okay, goes away? The Shastra says, good, you are now listening. I'm happy to hear that you are following our instruction. Listen now. And we are doing all of this. So it says that because when you wake up, you are covering up your own reality with a kind of like a film, a cloud. You're covering yourself up and you're looking at yourself through the cover, not as you are. There was a very nice example that we saw, I think, on the Saturday class, I think it was, in the Bhagavad Gita class, where Swami Akhandananda had pointed out that, so when you have a sweeper that is supposed to take all the leaves out, like for example in the fall, so when you have so many leaves that fall from the trees, that's in our house too, we have a lot of oak trees, and I think more than three-fourths of them are deciduous. And so this guy who takes care of it for me, he's just about to start, the leaves are all falling very much, and every week or even more than that, he has to blow all the leaves away. So if you look at the guy who does this for me, what does he do? So I have a very nice, I did about 10-15 years ago, some pavers in front of our home. It used to be an old asphalt driveway, and there were some problems with it, and finally I decided I'm going to make some nice pavers on this. So we took all of that out and put some beautiful pavers all over the driveway underneath the trees. And so when the leaves come, which is what's happening now, the pavers get completely hidden from the leaves. So once or twice a week, Mike St. Clair, who's the guy who works with me, he takes a blower and starts to blow all the leaves out. So this is the example given by Swami Akhandananda. So what he does not create the pavers. He does not even clean the pavers. He doesn't even touch the pavers. All he does is to remove the leaves that are covering it. That's all. The pavers have their own beauty. They have their own purity. They are nice looking. And he does not have to do anything about it. But in uncovering the pavers, he reveals back to us, and I pay him handsomely because he has done a good job of really uncovering the pavers for us. So this is exactly what the Acharyas say about the lack of ananda when you wake up. See, so listen carefully to this. This is exactly what is happening. I mean, this is not just an idle example. Our non-acceptance of this example is the one that causes us not to be happy. Our understanding of this should reveal something very profound to you, which is, I am basically Ananda. Not I, but everyone in the whole creation is basically Ananda. Ananda Swarupaha. Satchidanandaha. This is the truth. This is why at night time I do not have any kind of active covering of myself. I have a thin layer of ignorance about who I am. That is why I am asleep. I am asleep because my jivatvam, my sense of an individuality is not there. Because the individuality, the jivatvam, is the one that creates the covering. So the jivatvam is not there, so the covering is also not there. But in the process of my jivatvam being absent, I fail to recognize that I am Ananda while I'm asleep. Like I think one of the acharyas pointing out, you can never know that you are Ananda when you are asleep. Because in order for you to know that you are Ananda when you are asleep, you have to be awake. Your mind is not there, your buddhi is not there. That's what creates an understanding. They're not there. So you don't recognize that I am Ananda until after you wake up. And then the conclusion is, I slept well. Most of the time we say we did not sleep well. I woke up too often. I had some dreams that were weird. And so we don't even recognize the pleasantness of sleep, but it is there. And we do remember some of it and say, I had a very nice sleep. Generally, we all have a nice sleep. So that can only be done when you are awake. So going back to the swarupa of your deep sleep, you're not covering it up with anything except for a very thin veneer, I don't know. So in these very beautiful verses of the 11th chapter, Swami Vidyaranya has really done a great job of analyzing, not visualizing, but in analyzing what happens to the loss of my Ananda when I'm awake. And so we have gone through several aspects of that. One of the things that happens is that my sense of individuality comes up again. It never died, but it was hidden. It became non-manifest during the night, and it becomes manifest during the day. Re-manifest. It used to be there yesterday, and now the same individuality is reawakened today. So that's the first thing that happens. Then the way I evaluate myself as an individual is that I don't know that my fundamental nature is Ananda. I don't know that. Why don't I know that? Because ignorance has no beginning. Ignorance has an end, but it has no beginning. It's always been there. Like I've given this example, Swamiji's Dayanandji, I remember, he would say that supposing you're teaching a class on the days when we used to have, or even now, supposing I'm teaching this class here and some family member walks in and I introduce that person and say, this is my son. And you've never seen my son before. And so, supposing my son came in, actually sort of sometimes he doesn't live with me, but sometimes I visualize that he can bring his daughter, my granddaughter, who's now about 18 months old, and just walk in and I can just hold my granddaughter and show you her, all of you, who she is. So supposing my son comes in and just stands next to me, and you are looking at him and saying, who is this guy? And then after half a minute or so, I'll say, I want you to meet my younger son Manoj and my granddaughter. So you'll have something, oh, this is your son and your granddaughter. Oh, now you have some knowledge. So the question is, when did your ignorance of the fact that he is my son and she is my granddaughter begin? When did the ignorance begin? I ask you. So you didn't know this is my son? And if you were to, supposing you put something on the YouTube and say, no, I did not know this is your son. Then I reply to you, when did you not know this is my son? So you will say, what is wrong with this teacher? I never knew. You mean I would ask, it did not start any time? You'll say, no. So ignorance has no beginning. So the fact that I am Ananda is covering myself. And the only funny part of that is that I think I can have the ignorance about something else, but I don't know that I can have an ignorance about myself. So, of course you can, and this is proven through so many examples. The best example of that is the 10th man story. The fact that this person himself is the 10th man, and there was no cause for any sorrow, but he didn't know that. It's the best example. And there are other examples like that. So of course you can have ignorance about yourself as well. So then, other things come up. So what we are talking about in general, I was going to do some verses, but since this topic is the same topic, but I'm just doing it kind of like in an extempore fashion. So what we are talking about is what causes my sense of non-ananda. You know, when I say sorrow, that's too strong. Sorrow. We are not sorrowful, but we are not happy. Generally, we are not happy during the day. We are weighed down with all kinds of things. When did it start and why does it start? This is what we are looking at. Because I was perfectly okay when I was asleep, and then the moment I wake up, I'm not okay. Why? This is what we're doing. So here Shastra says, okay, here's what's happening. Number one, your sense of individuality gets expressed again. So just look at it. What does a sense of individuality mean? This is what in Sanskrit will be called jivatvam. The sense of being a jiva. This is the general case of being a jiva, jivatvam. So the tvam pratyaya means in general what a jiva is called jivatvam. Excuse me. So that's the first thing that happened. When you wake up, your jivatvam expresses itself. And the jivatvam has a very definite personality to it. It has a definite personality. It's not as though it's an unknown. No. My jivatvam is very familiar to me. I've lived with that all my life. And more or less what it means is it's all different for everybody, of course. But what it means is that my jivatvam is endowed with problems. And the biggest problem is that I am a limited person. Parichinnaha. In Sanskrit, the word for limitation is called parichinnaha. Paritaha chinnaha. Totally limited. And there are three aspects of limitation. One is I am Kalatah parichinnam, deshatah parichinnam, and vastutah parichinnam. I am limited in terms of time. How? Because my estimation is, all this is erroneous, but this is exactly what my feeling is. My estimation is that I began at a certain time. This is where we have birthdays. And we reinforce it. Happy birthday. Before I was born as a baby, I was not there. Is my firm conclusion. And you ask your mom and dad, do you think I was there before? And they say, nope. I brought you up. You were not there. I can tell you that. Your mom and dad will tell you. So then kalataha, so what is born means it must die. Because we don't have any example of something which is born but does not die. There is no such thing in the world which is born and does not die. So the birth accompanied by the cessation of the individuality is my conclusion about myself. Then deshataha I am parichinnaha, that I am not there, I am here. I am not in India, I am not in France, I am not in UK. I am here on the west coast and only there on one little corner in the room. Deshataha I am parichinnaha. Then the last one is vastutaha I am parichinnaha. That I am just me. I cannot be anybody else. Everyone else limits me and puts me in my place. This is who I am. So the jivatvam is accompanied by parichinnatvam, a sense of limitation, time-wise, space-wise, and individuality of a given form-wise. And so when I wake up, it is very obvious to me that my individuality all comes up. And individuality means parichinnatvam. And then, so this is the hardware, if you may. Then the software wakes up. And the software is, what do I need to do? What is needed? What is expected from me? And I am very much at the mercy of this long list of desires that I have to fulfill. Because from my experience I know that a sense of fulfillment, even though it might be temporary, but a sense of fulfillment depends on having finished everything. The meal has been prepared, bills have been paid, my work is going on well, then I am relatively fulfilled. If food is not ready, children are hungry, and office work is not finished, my clothes have to be laundered, all those kinds of unfinished jobs make me unhappy. I know that. So the software, after I wake up, immediately tells me, hey, you haven't done this, you haven't done that, you haven't done this, and get going. So my sense of limitation is accompanied by a sense of desires, disappointments, etc., etc. So then the Shastra says that just like a handyman or a sweeper is to uncover the pavers by this covering, you are covering up your ananda with all these things that you have put onto yourself. Starting with the fact that you are not just an individual. You're not an individual. You think you are an individual, as we know that very well. But the fact of the matter is you are not an individual. And because you think you are an individual, you are also now taking all the other software things along with that as part of the individuality. This is the covering. Is the covering. So what do I need to do? All I need to do is to take the covering of leaves and uncover the nice pavers. That's all you need to do. In fact, even Shastra cannot create the Atma. Shastra itself is our tool of Ishvara, and Ishvara is infinite. Sometimes it would be wonderful to go through the details of Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadachyate. We chant it every day at the end of the class. But, and I think we have talked about the details of it from time to time. But it's time to refresh it one of these days. Very beautiful, very profound. So, I'm uncovering, I am covering my sense of Ananda, which was there just a few hours ago when I was asleep. So it's not as though I have to create the Ananda. It is there. So the Ananda, which is unchanging, is there for all 24 hours. But the only thing happens is that in two of those stages, the Jagrata Avastha and the Swapna Avastha, I'm covering up my Ananda. And I'm looking at my covered self, not the independent self. Why don't I look at my independent self? Because of ignorance, self-ignorance. Okay, if that is the case, is that really a fact? Are you sure this is the situation? So I think what I will do, having given you this general picture of the covering and the Ananda and so on, I will insert some of the specifics about what the verses are saying. Instead of doing it the other way around where we go through verse by verse, which I could have done, but the way things started, I just wanted to give you an overall picture, and now we will insert some of the specifics from specific verses. For example, so when the Shastra says this is exactly what you are doing, you are covering yourself, my dear. You are already you are like pavers that are there for the whole year. But during the fall, the pavers get completely hidden. The beauty of the pavers get lost because of the falling leaves on it. So you need to really remove the leaves. You don't have to polish the pavers, nothing. It's there the whole time. Similarly, you are the very basis of Ananda. You are the very nature of Ananda. So if you look at it, 24-hour period, very important 24-hour period. Excuse me. So you are Ananda for all 24 hours. You are 7/24, full week, whole year, whole life. Your nature is Ananda. Everybody's nature is Ananda. That is the nature of Paramatma. And Paramatma is there in the whole creation. It is not your Ananda, it is Paramatma's Ananda. And you are borrowing it from him. But what happens is that this is the whole Srishti, that for 2/3 of the time you are covering it up. Are you sure this is the case? So here I just want to insert, I did it very specifically because there is a very particular case which we started last time. So if you look at the verse number 105 in Pancadasi, it is equivalent to the Bhagavad Gita verse number 6, 21, 6th chapter, verse number 21. And there we had started to talk about it, we didn't do it, is that we actually began talking about it, remember? So I will now connect it to what we did last week. So, if first of all, your mind has to be free of vrittis. So it has to be quietened down for you to see who you are. Because as long as thoughts are there, even though you are independent of the thoughts, but you have difficulty in recognizing the fact that you are different from the thoughts. So the best thing is to diminish the thoughts, and then you look at it again and let the thoughts come back slowly, and you see that you are not changed any, you are still the same person with or without thoughts. So this is the analysis with respect to the vrittis. We saw that. And remember the second thing we talked about? That you should be, this is what is called buddhigrahyam. Buddhigrahyam. So one is managrahyam, the other one is buddhigrahyam. What is buddhigrahyam? Buddhigrahyam means that you should be able to clearly convince yourself that that is your nature. It is not just that you remove the vrittis, but along with removing the vrittis, your sense of buddhi must be awakened to say, yes, I can see that I am distinct from my thoughts. This is the buddhi. This is the buddhi. The fact that you are distinct from your thoughts, the thoughts are mithya, they come and go, whereas you are the samvit, the sakshi, the unchanging, satyam jnanam. That you should be able to see when you have your thoughts somewhat under control. If they're running around making a lot of halla gulla, lot of noise and so on, it is difficult for you to do that viveka. Doesn't mean that the thoughts have to be gone completely. This is why we don't say there's no such thing as, you don't need a perfect samadhi. We don't need the Patanjali type of a samadhi. But the thoughts should be diminished to a point where you are able to take a viveka between Atma and Anatma. But in doing this viveka, who does the viveka? Buddhi does the viveka, your own sense of wisdom makes the conclusion. This is called buddhigrahyam. So in buddhigrahyam, as I'm mirroring what the acharyas, all the Mahatmas are saying. So this is not just my own ideas or anything like that. In buddhigrahyam, what needs to be done is removal of doubts. And I tell you, the removal of doubts, and I think this is my experience of reading all the various Mahatmas, Swami Chinmayananji, Swami Dayananji, Swami Maheshananji, and now Swami Akhandanandaji. And they all point to something very similar, if not the same. And they all say that what needs to be done is removal of your own doubts. What does that really mean? I think I recall this. In fact, it's so funny. As I recall it, I hope my memory is correct. I was practically sitting in this very room. Or maybe just outside this room. This room is completely different than it used to be. And now it's a kind of more like a media room. I have a television. If once in a while, if I want to see a sporting thing, then I turn this on. Otherwise, it's some benches and so on and so forth. Those days, it had some different things. But Pujya Swami Dayanand and I, when we built this home and occupied it in 1985, and Swamiji was very much involved. He was there for the Bhumi Puja, and then after it was completed, he came and stayed with us many, many times. He's very familiar with it. And I do remember, because there was a sense of disappointment in my heart after I completed the 2.5-year course at PRC in 1982. So we built this home 3 years after we completed the course. There was a sense of disappointment because my thinking was that at the end of the course I would become a Mahatma. Not a Mahatma, but kind of like a Jivan Mukta. But it didn't happen. Didn't happen. So one time I was just quietly asking Swamiji in my own personal moments, which I had many of them. And I said, Swamiji, what is it that I need to do? I have done some things that are quite big for me. I gave up my job at the prime of my career with Hewlett-Packard, at the age of 36 or 37. I transported my whole family to come with me. They were away for 2.5 years, away from their own friends. It was a big thing. And I thought that this would now be my crowning glory, that I would be now completely aware. And I was so hard-working those 2.5 years, you cannot believe. I have 2 other master's degrees. I didn't really work nearly as hard as I did So I didn't slough off my study of Sanskritam and then all the Prasthanatraya. I hardly slept more than 6 hours a night. Early in the morning we would have a class. Working very hard. So the thinking was, at the end of this I'll be done. And I was not done. I was a lot better off than I used to be before, but I'm not done. So one time I cornered Swamiji and I said, Swamiji, what is it that I need to do? Because I'm not completely done. And he understood that. You know what he said? Just be busy in removing your doubts. That's all he said. And I've never forgotten that. These are the words of a wise guru. It's not like saying, are you sure? I would doubt the very person who is telling me that I should not have a doubt. I didn't do that. But it's one thing to be convinced that I should remove the doubts, and the other one is to do it. And the whole process of my life has been to really remove it. So here, and then the same thing is now seconded by Swami Maheshananji. He's very high on this removal of doubts. And I recognize the same thing in Swami Akhandanandaji. This is a very important thing. So here, in the verse number 105, which is also from Bhagavad Gita 21, in the commentary by Swami Maheshananji, he says that buddhigrahyam means you have to remove all your doubts. So this is what is called samshaya nivritti. Samshaya means doubt, nivritti means to eliminate the doubts. So this is one of two types. What is called pramana vishayaka samshaya. The other one is prameya vishayaka samshaya. One is pramana vishayaka samshaya. What is that? That means the doubt about the truth that Vedas alone can reveal who I am. So let's stay with that for a minute. This is the doubt. So outwardly we can have Shraddha. And I would say, really true for all of us, but supposing we are not born not only Indians but Hindus. We are not born Hindus, we are born outside of India. And maybe we are not Hindus. We have a different upbringing. So there the samshaya would be even more accentuated. But doesn't matter, even if we are born Hindus, we still have the same samshaya. Samshaya means doubt. And what is that samshaya? Because the Shastra says, listen, it is not a sense of superiority. It is not a sense of uniqueness. Please forgive us. I'm not saying it because of superiority or uniqueness. Fact of the matter is, you do not see this clearly enunciated anywhere else in the world. How many people do we have? 8 billion people. And even amongst the 8 billion, 1 billion people in India, this is a very small fraction. It's not there. What can we say? We would love to discover another spiritual thought. We'll say, my gosh, we are both saying the same thing. That's wonderful. Yes, on the surface we all say we are all seeking God, we are children of the same. That's not what we are talking about. We're talking about clearly understanding what the truth of ourselves is, and that is not possible from anywhere else other than the Shastras. So now this is what is called pramana vishayaka samshaya. A doubt that is this the only pramana? Out of all the other pramanas, pramana means proofs. Is this the only proof? So my mind is not totally at the mercy of the truth enunciated by the Shastra until I remove this doubt. Because I'm sort of like holding on to some things. Well, maybe I'll give it a try. I'm not saying that I don't have Shraddha. I'll give it a try. But this is the situation. This subtle but in our mind that prevents us from completely submitting to it is a doubt. I have to remove that. And this removal can come only if I can see it slowly becoming clearer to me. It's an effort-based removal of the samshaya. If that doesn't happen, then my mind says, well, I don't know, you've been doing this for how long? And are you getting anywhere? Isn't it? Maybe we ought to try something else. Or maybe not try anything at all. Give it up. This is our fate. So all those doubts can come in about the veracity of the Shastra as the only pramanam. Because that also has to be understood, not believed. Not a question of belief here. In fact, it's the other way around. If you simply have total belief and say, okay, I don't have to understand it, I'm just going to believe it. It doesn't work. You have to understand it. This is why there was so much dialogue between Arjuna and Krishna. Because if Krishna could have said, you know what, are you listening to me? Just believe me. I know who I am. I am the Paramatma. And you just listen to me. No, it won't work because Arjuna has his own mind. His mind is saying, are you sure? So you have to be convinced. So this is what is called pramana vishayaka. Vishayaka means pramana is the vishaya of whom that approach is the doubt that you have to eliminate. Okay, so this is the first one. There is another samshaya. We have only covered one of the two. The second samshaya is prameya vishayaka samshaya. It is a doubt about what is being talked about. We accept the Shastra as the pramana. So hopefully the pramana vishayaka samshaya is done. But the prameya vishayaka samshaya is still there. What does it mean about that? What is the Shastra really saying? Is it talking about Advaita? Is it not Dvaita? Is it not Vishishta Advaita? Is it not Sankhya? Shouldn't Sankhya be considered? I have a friend, I'm telling you, this is a very fresh thing in my mind. I have a friend in the local area. And this is a long time ago. He hasn't changed his views, but I know this happened, I don't know, a couple of decades ago. And interestingly, not a couple of decades, not that long ago, because I remember one time I invited Swami Tattvavidananda ji to give a satsang in our home. So Swami Tattvavidananda used to come and stay with me for a number of times. He had stayed in this house, and then he preferred to go to a hotel. So for a number of years, I invited him and hosted him in this area. As you know, many of you know this. This started in the year 2002, 2003, 2002, I think, and continued on for a number. So it was wonderful. So one of the times I had a satsang at my own home, and we invited a lot of the friends. And this friend of mine that I was talking about, I thought that he was a kind of a well-learned person. He was a little bit younger than me. He was my younger brother's classmate. And but the whole satsang became kind of argumentative. And the reason is that somehow this gentleman I'm talking about, his grandfather, who was a big scholar of something, I don't know, he was a law scholar or something like that, and also was a Sanskrit teacher in Lahore, so he's a very well-known person, his grandfather. He had told him that, he told this guy, you know what you need to do? Study Sankhya. This is the Sankhya philosophy within the Shastra. And so he says that is where you have to really do. This Advaita, it doesn't make any sense and so on. Sankhya makes a lot of sense, so study Sankhya. So this guy, here's Swami Tattvavidananda ji, when we are doing this sampradaya of Sri Shankara with Advaita Vedanta, this is like what, in 2004 or 2005, so maybe about 16, 17 years ago. And this guy started arguing, Swamiji, Sankhya is the way to go, not Advaita. I was so embarrassed. So Swamiji also kept quiet. For a while he started arguing for a while, but then he says, you know, this guy is all set. Even today, he is really much more of a karmakandi and Sankhya and so on and so forth. And I don't really have any, we have a lot of very similar views on the politics and Modi and so on. And I meet him from time to time, but I do not discuss any Vedanta with him. So this is what is called Prameya Vishaka Samshaya. That what is the, so he also has Shraddha towards Shastra as the Pramana. But he has no Shraddha that what Vedas are talking about, which is fundamentally that it is only Parameshvara, it is only the Advaita Vedanta, which is the truth. Any kind of a Bheda, any kind of a Dvaita is Mithya, is not accepted by him and by others. So this is what is called Prameya Vishaka Samshaya. That is the Vedas really just talking about the Advaita Vedanta, or is it something else? So both of these doubts have to be clearly eliminated by your own efforts and your fortune to meet the right people. That is a big part of it. None of us are individually capable of figuring it out ourselves. We are totally at the mercy of what is taught to us. So it's really Ishvara's willingness to get you in touch with the right people. Regardless of that, until the doubts are removed, which is your job, individual student's job, along with the teacher. It's not going to be finished. So that is what the covering really means to complete this picture. What covering means is that your Ananda is covered with some doubts, non-enquiry, and based on non-giving up your individuality through desires, through frustrations, through wrong actions, it all kind of reverberates. And at the end, you are unable to or unwilling to remove the covering about the Ananda. This is what is being pointed out in these verses. And there is one very interesting summary verse of this, which is borrowed again from Bhagavad Gita, and which is given in oops, I'm at the wrong one. Which is given in verse number 107, and it's a good summary verse borrowed from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, verse number 23, and that summarizes what we have been talking about. So it might be good to sleep over all this material, and then when we get together again next week, hopefully, we will go over this verse number 107 to quickly summarize all the things that we have learned, and then we will go forward into some other areas. Okay, so with that, let me end the class. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Even in verse number 107, that's funny, the chat is not visible to me for some reason. It's taken that away. I don't see the chat window at all. That's funny. I don't know how to. I don't know how to display the chat window. I probably need to do some research on that and find out later on why am I not getting that. So anyway, I'm not able to see who is here or your questions. Forgive me for doing that. And hopefully things were reasonably clear, and we will see you next week. Hari Om.